I should have turned back the moment the cave swallowed the light behind me. But I didn't. I'm Cal Morgan, geologist, part-time spelunker, and full-time idiot for saying yes to this assignment. When the university called and offered me a grant to explore Black Hollow, I didn't hesitate. Not because I needed the money, though God knows I did, but because Black Hollow was the kind of mystery I couldn't resist. No one's mapped it fully. Locals avoided it like plague, said it whispered at night. Of course, I thought it was just wind, echoes bouncing off limestone walls. Nothing I hadn't heard before in deeper, darker places. But now I'm not so sure. It started on day 2. I was descending past the first known shaft, what the old maps labeled as Mouth of the Devil. Cheesy name, but apt. The walls narrowed fast, and the light from the surface choked off quick. My headlamp barely scratched the black ahead. I set anchors, rope, marked the walls with chalk. I was methodical, careful, a one-man crew with no room for mistakes. Then I heard the whisper, software, like breath over water. Not loud, not threatening, just strange. I froze, dangling 20 feet above a jagged stone floor. Listened. Nothing. Just my own breathing, my own heartbeat banging in my ears. I shook it off, called it nerves, the way you do when you're alone too long in the dark. But something about it lingered. It wasn't echo, and it wasn't me. It felt like something was behind me, but when I turned, of course, there was nothing but rock and shadow. I reached the bottom, clicked on my recorder, and dictated my notes. Section 4A, narrow descent. Audible anomaly detected, possibly wind through lateral shafts. Continuing exploration. Always sounded braver when I said it out loud. By day 3, I was too deep for a casual retreat. I'd mapped 3 new chambers, one with odd striations on the walls, perfectly circular grooves etched into the stone like something had spun its way through over centuries. Natural patterns, I told myself. Water erosion, maybe. But then I found the handprints. They weren't mine. I wore gloves. These were bare, smeared across the walls in long, frantic strokes, as if someone had tried to claw their way back up. Old, maybe. But how old? The prints weren't fossilized. They looked fresh, damp. No names were etched nearby. No gear left behind. And I'd read all the expedition logs. No one had come this deep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I set up camp in a small alcove, safe from falling rocks, checked my oxygen levels, and laid down. The whispering came again, this time closer. This time, it said my name. Cal. I sat up so fast I nearly cracked my helmet on the cave ceiling. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking like a teenager's. Silence. Then, a faint tapping, like someone drumming their fingers against stone. No rhythm, no logic, just tap, tap, tap. Then a pause. Then again. I checked my radio. Static. I was alone, or I was supposed to be. I recorded another log, my voice noticeably shaken. Unidentified auditory hallucinations, stress-induced, likely sleep deprivation, proceeding with caution. Even as I said it, I didn't believe myself. The next day, I found the hole. Not a tunnel, not a crack. A hole, perfectly circular, 3 feet wide, dropping straight into blackness. No rope marks, no dust around the edges, like something had cleaned it. I dropped a flare inside. It never hit the bottom. I leaned in closer, stupidly, instinctively. That's when I heard it again. Louder this time. The whisper was a scream just out of range, like hundreds of voices pressed against a wall too thick to break. "Cal, come down." I stumbled back, my headlamp flickering. Then the ground beneath me cracked. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. When I woke, my flashlight was flickering and my arms were numb from lying too long on the cold stone. The cave was darker now, somehow even blacker than before, like the shadows had thickened while I slept. There was a sound, not the distant drip of water or the moaning wind through the tunnels. This was closer. Breathing. Shallow, wet breathing, just beyond the reach of my light. I sat up too fast, bumping my head against the rock above, biting back a curse. My heart pounded. "Hello?" I said, voice cracking like I hadn't spoken in days. Silence. No, not silence. The breathing stopped, but something shifted. A faint scrape against stone. I swung the flashlight, catching only walls and damp, glistening floor. I pressed on, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. The tunnel narrowed, forcing me to crouch. My backpack scraped the ceiling. The air was different here, heavy, like breathing through cloth soaked in vinegar and blood. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed since I entered the cave, like the walls had moved behind me. My compass spun uselessly. My watch had stopped. Then I saw it. A thin red ribbon tied to a rock, one of the markers Ellie had left. Only it was torn, stained with something dark. I reached for it, and that's when I heard my name. Whispered, close. "Jacob." I froze. No one knew I was down here. Not even Ellie. I told her I was done caving for a while. She thought I was in Asheville visiting family, but the voice, it was hers. I would have known it anywhere. But it couldn't be. I should have turned around then. Any sane person would have. But I wasn't thinking clearly, not anymore. I was deep inside Black Hollow, and something down there had a hold on me already. The tunnel widened into a chamber. The walls were smoother here, unnatural, almost as if polished. The air was colder too, and I could hear water trickling somewhere ahead. Then I saw the carvings. Not scratches, not erosion. Symbols carved deep into the walls, circling the chamber like ancient warnings. Some looked vaguely familiar. Spirals, slashes, figures with too many limbs. Others were so foreign they hurt to look at. My skin crawled. In the center of the room was a pool, still, black, and perfectly round. I approached it slowly, drawn like a moth to flame. My light barely penetrated the surface, as if the water absorbed it completely. I knelt beside the pool. That's when I saw the reflection. Not mine. It looked like me, but it wasn't me. The face stared up from the water, pale and gaunt, eyes sunken and mouth open wide like a silent scream. It didn't move when I did. It just stared. Then it smiled. I stumbled back, slipping on the damp stone. My flashlight clattered to the floor, flickering wildly. In that chaos of half-light and terror, I saw movement behind me. Not shadows, something real. Hands reached from the pool, long, thin fingers. I turned and ran. Back through the tunnel, gasping, clawing through the dark. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was crawling after me. I just ran until the air turned warmer, until I collapsed against a wall, shaking and soaked in sweat. But the whispers never stopped. They knew my name now. I must have sat there in the dark for hours. I don't really know. Time down there didn't work the way it does on the surface. Seconds stretched. Minutes collapsed. But the whispers kept pace like a heartbeat. They called my name in Ellie's voice, in my own voice, even in my father's voice. And he's been dead for 10 years. It wasn't just mimicry. It knew things, intimate things, things I'd never said aloud. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, the result of isolation, stress, maybe even bad oxygen. But deep down, I knew better. Black Hollow was alive, conscious in a way I couldn't explain, and it was hungry. I forced myself to keep moving. Staying still felt dangerous, like giving it permission to creep deeper into my mind. I followed what I thought was the same tunnel I came from, but nothing looked familiar. The air was damper, heavier, almost viscous. Then I heard a sound that shattered whatever resolve I had left. Sobbing. A woman. Muffled but unmistakable. I should have turned back. I should have ignored it. But it sounded like Ellie. I called out, "Ellie?" My voice cracked against the stone walls. No response, just more weeping. I moved toward it, deeper into the cave. The walls grew narrower again, breathing down on me like lungs. The flashlight's beam danced shakily across jagged formations that resembled ribs. I swear I felt something exhale as I passed through one particularly tight gap. Finally, the tunnel opened into a hollow chamber, and I saw her. A woman kneeling on the ground, facing away from me, shoulders trembling. She wore Ellie's jacket. "Ellie!" I ran forward, dropped beside her, hands shaking as I reached out. "Ellie, how the hell did you—" She turned. It wasn't Ellie. It looked like her. The same sharp jaw, same blue eyes. But those eyes were wrong, glassy, hollow, and when she smiled, her teeth were all wrong too. Too many. Too long. "Jacob," she whispered in a voice stitched from Ellie's memory. I stumbled backward, crawling, scrambling like a wounded animal. She didn't follow. She just watched, the smile stretching as I fled. I don't remember the next tunnel. I just ran, tripped, fell, got up again, over and over. At some point, the whispering stopped. Silence returned, thick and suffocating. It wasn't comforting. It was expectant, like the cave was holding its breath. Then, ahead, I saw light. Not flashlight glow, natural light. I ran toward it like a man drowning, lungs burning with hope. And then I saw it. The crack in the rock, sunlight bleeding in. My escape. I squeezed through, gasping as daylight kissed my skin. But what I saw outside made my stomach turn. I wasn't outside. I was in another chamber, vast and domed, the light pouring in from a fissure high above, too narrow to reach. The floor below was scattered with old climbing gear. Backpacks, helmets, a broken camera, all abandoned. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. And worst of all, some of that gear looked recent. Too recent. I stood frozen, staring at the pile of gear like it was a graveyard. Because that's what it was. Every harness, every carabiner, every cracked helmet belonged to someone who had come down here and never made it back out. Each piece whispered its own story of hope, curiosity, and death. I knelt beside the pile, fingers trembling as I brushed dust off a climbing logbook. The first few pages were intact. Names, dates, equipment checklists. Then it got stranger. Scribbled notes in the margins, frantic handwriting. One page just read, "It remembers what you love." Another, "Don't follow the voices." Too late for that, I thought. I flipped to the final entry. No date, just a smear of something that looked too dark to be ink. Below it, a single line. "You're not alone down here, but you will be." I stuffed the logbook in my jacket, unsure why. Maybe proof. Maybe to remind myself this was real, that I wasn't hallucinating, that I wasn't becoming like the others. I had to find a way out. There had to be an exit, a route they missed or were too far gone to take. I circled the chamber, scanning the walls for handholds or tunnels. That's when I heard it again. The whispers. But this time, they weren't calling my name. They were singing. A soft lullaby, One my mother used to hum when I had night terrors as a kid. The melody floated through the cavern, impossibly distant, yet so close it felt like it was inside my ears. I turned toward the sound, breath catching in my throat. There was someone standing at the edge of the chamber. Not Ellie, not the woman from before. It was me. A perfect mirror, down to the dirt on my jacket and the cut on my cheek. He smiled, and my blood went cold. "You can leave," he said in my voice, "but you'll never escape." I stepped back, heart pounding. "What are you?" He tilted his head. "What you become if you stay, if you listen." I reached for my knife, not to attack, just to remind myself I was still real, still me. But he laughed. "That won't help. You can't kill what's already part of you." Then he dissolved into mist. Just vanished. I fell to my knees, hands clutching my skull. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Every thought felt like it had an echo, like something else was thinking with me, or for me. But I wasn't giving in. Not yet. I pushed through another tunnel, this one narrower than the others. It scraped my shoulders raw, tore at my clothes, but I didn't stop. Eventually, I found myself in a tunnel unlike the others, smoother, older, and humming faintly like the pulse of a living thing. There were markings on the walls, symbols, circles within circles, eyes, teeth, and in the center of it all, carved into the stone, leave one piece behind, or lose yourself completely. I didn't know what it meant, but deep down, I understood. Black Hollow demanded sacrifice. I pulled the logbook from my jacket, held it in my hands. It was mine, my tether, my proof, but I left it behind and kept moving. I kept crawling. The tunnel narrowed until I had to slide on my stomach, arms stretched ahead like some blind creature of instinct. Every inch forward felt like a lifetime. My breathing turned ragged in the tight space, each exhale bouncing back in my face. Then, open air. I dropped into a cavern so large it felt like I'd fallen into the ribcage of the earth. Stalactites hung like jagged fangs. A deep, slow wind sighed through the space, but I couldn't tell from where. It felt like the cave itself was breathing. In the center stood a lake, perfectly still, black as obsidian. And on the shore, sitting cross-legged like they'd been waiting for me, was Ellie. She looked calm. Her eyes locked onto mine, unreadable. I ran to her, relief and terror tangling in my chest. "Ellie," she smiled faintly. "You made it." I dropped beside her, gripping her shoulder. "We have to get out of here now." But she didn't move. "I tried," she said softly. "I tried so hard, but it won't let me leave." "What won't?" I asked, heart pounding. She looked at the lake, and for the first time I saw it move. A ripple, slow and deliberate, like something massive stirring beneath the surface. Then the whispers came again, only now, they weren't in my head. They were coming from the water. A chorus of soft voices, some familiar, some not. One sounded like my dad, another like my childhood friend who drowned when we were 12. The lake was showing me pieces of myself, memories I'd buried, fears I thought I'd conquered. Ellie took my hand. It felt cold, fragile. "It doesn't feed on flesh, Jake," she said. "It feeds on identity, on what makes you you." I stared into her eyes, and for a moment, they weren't hers. They were mine. Same color, same little scar on the brow from when I fell off my bike. I pulled away. "You're not Ellie." She looked down. When she looked back up, her face was shifting, like clay being molded. Features stretched and twisted until she looked like my mother, then my brother, then me again. "I remember you now," she said with my voice. I remember everything you've forgotten. I stumbled back, heart thundering. You're just another echo, I whispered. Another reflection. The thing that wore Ellie's shape stood unbothered. We are all echoes down here. The hollow doesn't create lies, Jacob. It just shows you truths you can't live with. Then she turned and walked into the lake. Didn't sink, didn't float. She merged. The surface swallowed her without a sound. I stood there shaking, alone again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. I didn't know how long I stood there before I noticed something else. A narrow path on the far side of the cavern, hidden in the shadows, almost impossible to see. But it was there. And suddenly I knew. This was my last chance. Whatever that thing was, whatever this place did to people, I still had one piece of myself left. And I was getting out with it. The path was barely wide enough for my boots. Every step echoed like a threat, like something was following just outside the edge of sound. I kept one hand on the jagged wall for balance, the other gripping the small LED light I'd saved in my pocket. Weak, flickering, but still mine. I followed the path upward. The incline grew steep, almost vertical, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I heard the lake behind me now. Not water, not really. Something sloshing, whispering, slithering, like it had noticed I wasn't going to stay. It wasn't going to let me leave. My breath burned in my lungs, muscles screaming. The passage narrowed again. I forced myself through cracks I didn't think my body could fit, scraping skin, drawing blood. And then, I saw it. A faint glow. Real light. Moonlight. I reached for it like a man drowning. But just before I could crawl through, a voice called out behind me. "Jake!" I froze. It was Ellie's voice, but different. Raw. Desperate. I turned. She stood in the tunnel, barely lit by my dying LED. Only, it wasn't Ellie. Her face was wrong, off by degrees, like a painting smeared before the paint dried. Her eyes were mine again. "Don't leave," she whispered. I said nothing. "If you go," she continued, stepping closer, "you won't be you anymore. You'll forget. You'll try to pretend this never happened. But I'll be waiting, Jake. In every silence, every shadow." She reached for me. I backed away. "You're not real." Her voice shifted, my voice again. "Then why are you still listening?" I turned and crawled through the crack. The cold night hit me like a slap. I stumbled out into a rocky clearing. Stars above. Real air in my lungs. I collapsed onto the ground, laughing and sobbing at once. Somehow, I had made it. They found me 3 days later, dehydrated and barely coherent, curled near the mouth of the old cave entrance. I was airlifted to a hospital and questioned by police, rescue workers, federal agents. None of them could explain what happened. Ellie was never found, nor the others. The cave system was sealed off. Unstable structure, they said. Unsafe to explore. I didn't argue. I never went back. But I never left it behind either. Because they were right, whoever they are. I tried to forget. I filled my life with noise, city sounds, constant movement, other people. But in the quiet moments, when the world goes still, I hear her voice. My voice. I hear it. Whispers beneath my thoughts, scratching at the walls I've built. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the lake again. Still. Black. Waiting. So if you ever find yourself near Black Hollow and you feel the urge to explore, don't. Because the cave doesn't want explorers. It wants reflections, and it never lets them go.